Welcome back to another episode of Caps Off by the Game Day.
Welcome back.
Hey, it's playoffs. Playoffs time.
Playoffs. You don't sound too excited today.
Yeah, well,
As a Dolphins fan,
as a
perhaps,
Dolphin,
should
yeah,
I bring
dare.
that up? Yeah.
No, you shouldn't.
No? Okay, don't bring it up, but playoffs are here.
Playoffs are here. Shout out to a few people did tweet me, though, asking me how it was feeling. So I appreciate some of our listeners being very kind or so much as to
Respectful.
respectful.
They're respectful people, our
Mhm.
listeners. I would say more respectful than most podcast listeners.
I
Most other podcast listeners, of
I
course.
concur with that
You
statement.
concur with that?
I would concur.
Absolutely.
How'd you do? How many you making playoffs?
Yes,
How many
playoffs.
leagues we make the playoffs in?
Well, man, I only pay attention to one.
Oh, you're
And
dynasty.
so we are in there. Highest. I like what you do with your league. And I'm glad we're bringing this up now because I think most leagues should probably do this. A payout for the highest score. It makes sense naturally.
Yeah.
You should get rewarded for scoring the most points, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be first in your league because you could run into other tough matchups and stuff like that. So that's my case. I finished fourth, even though I'm the highest score. Annoying. One game back from first, but the first three places were one game ahead of me, right? So, but anyways, I'm in the playoffs, 4-5 matchup this upcoming week, and I feel pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I know we weren't recording on this one. Is it possible to hit recording just for this? Just because I just thought of something. You were talking about the highest score, and obviously in one of my leagues, it's kosher. You could do your thing, Kondo. Do your thing, Kondo. I just want one thing to say because I think people need to hear it. That in one of my leagues, obviously, I told you about this whole high scoring dilemma, right?
Yeah.
People that make the playoffs. What actually ended up happening in another one of my leagues, where last night someone missed the playoffs because the person that was in last place in the league put up 175. The person he lost to put up 168, I think it was.
Damn, bro.
Would have beat every other team in the league and missed the playoffs because he lost.
Yeah.
So I believe that that probably happened a good amount, not just this year, but in years past.
Oh,
sorry,
for
Kondo,
sure.
where people are missing playoffs because of just getting screwed by wins and losses. Is that a Tamagotchi in your pocket?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's that beeping
that was
and shit,
crazy.
bro? I'm like,
That was wild.
well, here playing Pac-Man.
Oh, you needed to get a card. I apologize. Because I thought of something that I think I want to turn into a video, which is like things of changing. How would you change your league? And I think it's one of those. You just mentioned high scores, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a situation. Are we good? We're good to go. So I think a lot of people obviously got screwed with points for this year and wins and losses. So if you do want to spice up your fantasy league, this is how you spice it up next year, right?
Yes.
This is how I see it. So first and foremost, similar to what you just said, there's a payout for the highest score. You should get rewarded based off of that. What you should also do in your fantasy league is do the week based off of a win and loss and a highest score. So here's what I mean. Most fantasy leagues right now only consist of wins and losses, right? But the problem with wins and losses, similar to what I just told you, is that you could miss or you could be the second highest scorer in the league or that week on any given week, but the person you played happened to have an amazing week and went off for 175, and now you lose.
Yeah.
And frankly, there's only one thing you can control in fantasy. There's only one variable, and it's the team you put out on the field, right? Can't play defense.
No.
Can't play defense. So you incentivize based off of that. So what does that look like? Every single week, your team could either go 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2. You get a win or a loss for if you win or lose, and you get a win or a loss if you are top 6 or top 5 if it's a 10-team league in scoring. So I could go 1-1 if I lost, but I still put up 160 in the highest score. So that way, at the end of the season, it's going to come out very similarly, right?
Yeah.
As I showed you the spreadsheet that I made for one of my leagues.
You did indeed.
Most of the time, it will be very similar. But the people that got screwed and people that miss the playoffs because of stupid performances like that, where you put up the second most points, maybe on the entire year, but the person in last place happens to have an insane week, then you still can make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's a great rule.
And I think it's something that only Sleeper can do. And I think the way you also, what'd you say? What'd you say?
ESPN actually introduced it middle of the year this year. Wild move by them to do
Did
it in
they?
the middle of the year.
Facts?
I found it out because I was going to have to manually do it for my ESPN league because everyone wanted to play in ESPN.
Whoa.
They actually have a thing where you can do a bonus record. So if you go into your league settings, if you're a league manager, you want to do it last minute, or you were planning on doing it manually, like our league, you can now do that in ESPN.
Holy shit. Because I was talking with one of my commissioners who we didn't know. Because I was going to say, you could, which I didn't know on ESPN specifically, you could manually input playoffs. which is cool because I think obviously wins and losses, you would need to do that, right? But now that you can calculate that based off of scoring, it goes to show that I think it's going to become more of a common practice. So if you want to change your fantasy league next year, show this video to your commissioner. Let's get some wins and losses on the board. Let's get highest scores on the board. Naturally, it will come out to be the same, but I think it's the only way to make fantasy more fair for if you actually consider yourself a good fantasy player and could draft the right team.
Yeah, bro, it could change somebody's destiny, man. Going into the playoffs,
it would have changed mine in one of my leagues.
It could not change yours, but I think if you're in a position to where you're either getting fucked or not fucked by this, then
fucked
like
or not fucked. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Naturally, consensually, it would be good. But like, I was looking at, because obviously now we're heading into the playoff week, and I was looking at my league and the highest scores and the placements and stuff like that. And I was like looking at points against and see who really got fucked.
Yeah.
And see if like, you know, I'm in fourth, even though I'm the highest score. I'm like, how much did I get scored on compared to these top three? And it wasn't by that much, so that made me feel better. But then I went down to the person who's in second to last place. Bro, I'm going to actually pull it up because it's so bad. And I have it right here. It's so bad. So the leader, the person in first place, which is actually Gio, shout out. He got 1,600 points scored against him. Logan, who is in second to last, got 2,000. And that's by far the most. So, for example, like I got scored 1,800 against me, and I scored 19. I actually scored 1972 and got scored on 1792. So there we go. But yeah, man, you always feel bad for somebody who just got absolutely fucked. It's by who you went up against all year.
Cooper on TikTok just said, I have scored over 100 points more than the next person, and I still am not going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's annoying, bro. Like
someone said, Matthew Port said, I'm in fourth with the most points. It's a wild year.
There you go. Me too, bro. Me too. Fourth place, most points. But
in this league that I'm missing the playoffs because I told you, and also this league, the last seed makes it strictly based off of highest points. I'm fourth in points for, but I'm going to miss the playoffs. Yeah. And I had looking at it right now, I have the third most points against. So it's fantasies. It's interesting. But hey, that's how you change your league next year. Yes. Implement this new rule where you get a win for wins and losses and a win for being a highest score, or maybe you beat the league average, right? But there's always going to be, you're either going to come out of a week 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2. And I think it's a good rule. And I think it helps change and makes fantasy a little bit more fair and not just more about luck of wins and losses and luck of the draw. But this is the week 14 fantasy recaps episode where we will recap everything that happened in week 14. Yep. Obviously, there's not much to do moving forward because this is playoffs now.
Yep.
So we're going to start doing start sits. Maybe there's someone you could pick up on the waiver wire to best prepare yourself. I think Ty Chandler's out there in a couple leagues and Madison got injured. But I want to talk through a couple things, not just answering questions, but I want to talk through, you and I were talking a little bit off the pod. We'll get to some of these questions, but who are like some of your biggest standouts this year in fantasy that like you think won a lot of like, that really stood out to you? What are some people that you're like, wow, this fucking
Mike Evans?
Woo!
In what year is this man in? Year 11,000, something like that. Yeah, Mike Evans, man. The fact that he's still doing this, wide receiver 1. Obviously, apologies to everyone out there who started Mike Evans this past week, hoping that he would keep doing what he has been doing all year. He only put up 1.8. But even with that 1.8 performance, he's a wide receiver 9. I don't know if any of us expected him to finish as a wide receiver 1 this year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He obviously did. So Mike Evans stands out to me. This one's near and dear to my heart. Another guy that really stands out to me is CeeDee Lamb.
I mean,
come on, bro. We knew he was like that. We didn't know he was going to be wide receiver 2 overall heading into the playoffs, bro. I mean, you look at his performances all year, like 11, 24, 10, 14, 8, 18, 41, 27, 39, 16, 17, 32. Like week over week, he's going to be the best, highest scoring player on your team probably. And you probably got him at the end of the first, maybe high, top of the second for a lot of people. So those two guys really stood out to me, I would say.
Yeah, those are look, and again, what did we say for like the first 5 weeks of fantasy? CeeDee Lamb, buy low. And if you got CeeDee, you're probably in the playoffs. The CeeDee Dak stat or stack is probably a team you might have the buy.
If you're stacking, Dak and CeeDee.
Like those two 1 year league. What's crazy to me, and Tyreek, it didn't stand out to me. Like obviously we expected this with Tyreek, But Tyreek's fantasy season is going to go down as one of the greatest of all time. Now, granted, he got hurt, and if he doesn't play next week against the Jets, that's definitely going to hurt it.
Sucks.
Only got 10 points last night and played like 30% of the snaps.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. He has 322 PPR points this year. The next closest is CD with 283. There's a chance that Tyreek can finish with like 380 fantasy points this year, which is stupid.
Yeah.
I go down as one of the greatest wide receiver fantasy seasons, which is wild.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen this year so far is historic already.
Yep.
And so, I mean, we've always talked about what he's on pace for week after week. But Tyreek is truly just a game breaker, man. Like, there hasn't been a player like him. I mean, on rare occasions, you'll see it sometimes. Like, you get the Christian McCaffrey years, you get the different things like that. But Tyreek Hill, week over week, like we say, like, look, if you could try to trade him, but you better get a ransom in return. But I think it's like one of those guys where it's not even worth trading. Not even.
Totally.
I mean, you dealt with this. You traded him away, and it didn't end up working out for you, right?
It didn't. Yeah, I ended up missing the playoffs because I traded Tyreek away.
It's like you always think he's going to regress because he has to regress.
Well, no,
right?
the thought between the trading Tyreek, I would have never have said trade Tyreek, but the thought was the Achane was attached to it. So I was downgrading Tyreek to Amon-Ra to upgrade at Bijan over Achane. And frankly, Achane obviously had a good game.
It made sense what you were doing, but I guess it's more to my point is that like Tyreek has been so high week over week that you naturally think like he's going to regress a little bit.
Yep.
Even he's still going to be amazing. He's still going to be a top blank receiver, top 5. But he's going to regress a little bit, but he hasn't. Week over week, he just keeps doing his thing. It's insane.
Some people that stood out to me this year that really also probably won people a lot of their, or not won anything yet, but giving them the bye. Raheem Mostert, RB2 on the year. Like, that is a guy that you probably got in the 8th or 9th round, probably even later than Achane. And you know what that's telling me is that in fantasy, like, we've always said draft people on good offenses, like really, really good offenses,
right.
But that it's not like you don't always need volume. You obviously want the touchdown vultures. And he's had volume, but he's also kind of remind me of Jamal Williams. Like, he's leading the NFL right now in rushing touchdowns, more than CMC. So I never would have expected that. I think Raheem Mostert is a crazy one. That's definitely someone that I still think can be a league winner just because of what he brings to the table. He can easily score 2 touchdowns. Another person that I think probably getting some people really into the 1 or 2 seed, Alvin Kamara.
Oh my God.
Like, you drafted him around that 3rd to 5th round.
I tried to trade for him earlier too.
I drafted Kamara in one of my leagues and I ended up trading him. But Kamara is a guy that like he's RB5 right now on the year. And yet he missed three weeks. Technically, you could say he missed 4 because of the bye, even though everyone obviously nets out with the bye. But
his output's insane.
It's stupid.
Bro.
It's true. Kyron Williams is obviously another one. That's a big one. And then lastly, the other thing that stood out to me is like we've always drafted Travis Kelce because he's a cheat code at the position. Travis Kelce right now has 1 more point than TJ Hawkinson on the year. He's got 20 more points than Sam Laporta, and he's got 27 more points than George Kittle. Like, from the top 5 tight ends in fantasy, like, it's not that much different. Travis Kelce did not give you a positional advantage this year, and I think that is a massive one. And most people that probably drafted Kelce in that first round missed the playoffs.
Yeah, no, look, there were a lot of speculation that this could be the year that Travis falls off. And that is subjective to what you think falling off is.
Right.
But Travis Kelce is still Travis Kelce, but clearly he's not giving you the same positional advantage, which is why you draft him in the first round. So I think next year, obviously, his stock's going to drop a bit. He's not going to be that first round guy that you're saying he's going to be better than every other tight end. But I don't think it's just Travis falling off a bit naturally, getting older and stuff like that. It's going to happen. I think he's still going to have a lot of value. I think it's also the other tight ends really coming up.
Totally.
I mean, we haven't had that recently. And for the past few years, we haven't had that. You've had Kelce and Kittle sometimes sporadically, Darren Waller, and then some guys in and out. Like, there hasn't really been a strong overall group of tight ends that is our tight end ones like we have with receivers and running backs. And running backs this year is a different story. But next year, I mean, you're looking at going into the year, drafting Travis Kelce. George Kittle's still going to be there. Hawkinson, like you mentioned. Trey McBride is right now a top 5 tight end for like everybody, rest of the season, all this stuff. So it's a good tight end landscape going forward.
Yeah, I think Trey McBride's going to kind of be in that TJ Hawkinson route, or not in that realm, I would say, next year during drafts, right?
Yeah.
As early as 3, as low as 5 type of situation.
Yeah, it's going to be right there.
Also, Matthew Port on TikTok just said, also Sam Howell. Not just Sam Howell, but Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy QB5 on the year. Sam
That's
Howell
crazy.
QB6. Both ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Like Jordan Love also
Yeah.
QB9, and that's a waiver wire pickup. 3 guys within the top 12 were all picked up on the waiver wire. And to me, that's pretty insane. I think Dak also was picked up on the waiver wire in some leagues. Like, because he started off slow. Dak started off with 6 points, 19, 15, 14, 7. Dak, you probably was found on the waiver wire. So
Dak's what,
I think that's
QB2
crazy. Dak's QB3 on the year.
QB3?
Yeah. So I think it's been a crazy year. I think I never would have expected it to kind of net out like this in terms of, but it's showing that you don't just need to draft Jalen Hurts in the 3rd round, even though Jalen's still QB2 on the year, but like you can get production elsewhere. So I'm excited to see what the ADPs are. Josh Allen.
Right.
And with all the mistakes still, I'm excited to see what the ADPs look like next year. But I think in order to progress in fantasy, we got to make that rule change to everyone's leagues.
I totally agree. I
want to do some questions though, because obviously we're not going to go for too long on this episode, but I do want to talk anything fantasy, anything that comes to mind after week 14. Obviously, this is the start of the playoffs. So if you do have a fantasy question, make sure to drop it below. We're going to go ahead and answer it, help you out. Matthew on YouTube said, yo, boys, thinking of benching Patrick Mahomes for my playoff semifinal for week 16. Thoughts on benching Patrick Mahomes? Because I'll be honest, I don't hate it at all.
I don't hate it at all either.
It depends who else you have, but I definitely do not hate that.
I mean, Frank Amiranti, legend, one of the top fantasy rankers week over week. I think 4th overall or something like that amongst all fantasy experts or whatever you want to call them. He said last week, if you have another guy, there are options. There's going to be options week over week that probably you picked up on the waiver or that you consider streaming that are going to be better than some of these top quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, Patrick Mahomes is one of those guys that there are weeks you're going to start somebody else over him just because not only of how he's been performing lately in that Chiefs offense, but also because other guys have great matchups and they could take advantage of those matchups. We've seen that this year with Josh Dobbs. We've seen it with, Sam Howell's been a consistent producer week over week. So now you're probably starting him consistently, but there's other guys like that you should consider over a guy like Mahomes, especially if he has a tough matchup going ahead.
So Joe on TikTok also asked this question: Purdy versus Arizona or Mahomes at New England next week, 1st round of the playoffs?
I'm going Purdy.
I think
I understand you want to go Mahomes.
I think Purdy's floor is the reason. I agree. I think you start Purdy. Let's start there, right? Just because of floor. And in fantasy, especially in the playoffs, give me the floor right now because I have no idea. I can get 8 from Mahomes. I can go off for 30.
I don't know if Mahomes can get 30 against New England.
Here's what I would say. Yes, but we know that there are certain types of players that tend to bounce back, right? And it usually applies for wide receivers. When wide receivers don't get the ball, they usually have a blow-up game.
Yeah.
There is so much emotion coming out of Kansas City right now that it would not shock me if somehow, some way, this performance against New England is by far the best performance from that offense this entire season. It wouldn't shock me. Just because
Mahomes never shocks you.
No, it would shock me because of just how they performed and how Mahomes has not been this elite quarterback. It wouldn't shock me. I'm going to start Brock Purdy, but I think Brock Purdy gives you that floor. But the next matchup is Las Vegas and Cincinnati, and then the Chargers. And it'll obviously week 18 doesn't happen, but you'd have Vegas and Cincinnati. So it would line up to be a good ending to start Mahomes. But I think I go Brock Purdy right now.
Yeah, man. Look, like you just said, I didn't even realize Brock Purdy was QB5. Yeah, you got to go with him right now. I mean, that's consistent week over week, bro. Like over the whole season. This isn't like it's been 2 weeks and Brock's riding like a little 2-week high and Mahomes has been bad. No, this is all a year. Brock Purdy's QB5. So I know the name for Mahomes is bigger, but right now you just got to go for the better output. What are you probably going to get a better output from? I think it's Brock Purdy. And then, like you said, the next 2 weeks after that, Mahomes has a really nice schedule. And I think you're dealing with that with a couple of guys in that first week of the playoffs. Like I'm looking at my Justin Fields. I play in a Superflex league. He plays the Browns this week, and I don't love that for a quarterback playing the Browns. That really good defense, even though Fields has been playing well. So, like, should I start another guy there? Maybe a receiver? I probably will because we saw the Browns get slightly exposed 2 weeks ago against the Rams, and that's the only thing that's occurring there. But then if I look at the next 2 weeks after that, Fields has 2 cupcake matchups.
Yeah.
So it's like, just because you're benching a guy this week doesn't necessarily mean you're benching him for the rest of the playoffs. Like, you can bench Mahomes this week and then start him the next couple weeks.
Zach,
one last interesting thing about that is you look at those defenses too. obviously the Bears defense, you think that's a cupcake matchup.
Yeah.
They've been shutting down quarterbacks, albeit against Minnesota 2 weeks ago. But Jared Goff last week had under 7 points. Mitch Trubisky just had 20 against New England.
That's a good point.
I don't know that I have a good answer, but that is something
you're saying to the Purdy Mahomes argument.
Yes, that these matchups are closer than it would seem just based on the name.
I just think what we've seen with Purdy is that we know he's going to get you 250 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. That's the floor, right? So if that's the floor, because it's playoffs and because Mahomes, the ceiling is no question is way higher than Brock Purdy. I just think you don't have room for error, right? Now, also it could depend who else is on your team, because if you have a bunch of ceiling and floor players, like if you made it as a 7 seed, 6 seed, and you just made it, you're on the cusp, then I think I go Brock Purdy. I'm not taking any risks. A question that's come up, this is from Zach Wroblewski, and also on, I think Camelo asked this on TikTok. 2 questions basically that revolve around Jake Browning. So Zach's question is, any quarterback I should pick up? I have CJ Stroud, who's on concussion, and Josh Dobbs, who is being benched. I have a choice between Matt Stafford, Will Levis, and Jake Browning. I think I'm going with Jake Browning.
Who does Stafford have this week? I think it totally depends on matchup. Browning has been playing well. I'm probably not going Levis. It's probably Stafford or Browning.
I think when I look, Connor, do you have that?
Stafford plays the Commanders.
Yeah, I'm going with Stafford. I trust him more. I just trust him more. I know Browning's been playing well, but I know who Stafford is. And Browning could – look, we saw Dobbs play very well and then shit the bed for a couple weeks. And Browning is playing who?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going Stafford.
Yeah. I don't have enough to back up why I would not go Stafford, right? But like Jake Browning, just the talent around him allows him to succeed. So I would pick up Jake Browning and drop Josh Dobbs for starters. And then probably start Stafford. If you win and Jake Browning has another good game, then you probably start Jake Browning.
Gotcha.
I think that's probably the way to go about it. Someone said Lamar or Purdy. I think you always start Lamar, right?
Yeah, you start Lamar. Lamar, look, man, even with some bad weeks, Lamar's still QB4 on the year. Like, he's ahead of Brock Purdy, even that we were just talking about. He's ahead of other guys like Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, you got to go Lamar, man, week over week. He's going to do his thing. When he turns up, he turns up.
Adam Rios asked, who's a better quarterback for the playoffs? Joe Flacco, Kyler Murray,
Zach Wilson?
Or is it
Russell? That's probably Russell.
I think it's Russ, yeah. Or Stafford. He had Herbert.
I would go Kyler Murray, in my opinion.
Just tough matchup against San Francisco this week.
It is, and we've seen San Fran do their thing against good quarterbacks.
I think you got to go Kyler, though. You just want the rushing. You just want the, like.
I still think he might have the safest floor out of those. Actually, Russell Wilson probably has the safest floor.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't think I'll ever see.
It's just hard to start rest because you know how capped that ceiling
exactly. Is Russell Wilson going to put up a 3-touchdown performance? I don't think so.
Probably
ever.
not.
I think it's his stat line is always going to be 2 touchdowns, maybe an INT.
Yeah.
So sure, you would take that, right? Cortland Sutton's feasting. But I just want Kyler Murray. I just want the rushing because I know Kyler can at least get me 10 points, which is not great in the fantasy playoffs. But I also don't trust the Broncos that much, even though they've been good. So I think I lean Kyler.
The Broncos are playing the Lions, though.
It's a good matchup. At home or away?
It's a great matchup in Detroit.
That's a good bounce back spot for Detroit, though.
That's fine, but they're going to score a lot. Their defense isn't going to be doing that. The Lions' defense is a shot. Yeah, look. Yeah, because of the matchup that Murray has against San Fran, I probably lean Russell Wilson. I'll say that, but I like. I mean, if you're going to start Kyler, start Kyler. I don't mind that at all.
I have a question from a fan who is not showing up on the screen here for some reason. It's definitely not a question from me. Would you start Kyler this week against San Francisco or Justin Fields this week against Cleveland?
It's a great question.
I would start Fields versus Cleveland. He's going to run the ball.
He's going to run the game in San Francisco or Arizona? Do we know that? Because I do think that makes a difference.
I believe it is in Arizona, but the Cleveland game is in Cleveland. Cleveland is allowing 10 points per game at home, 31 points per game.
That's a stat.
Wow. That's a stat. There you go. Yeah, the dog pound's real.
I'll be honest. I don't think the Cardinals win this game, obviously, but I think the Cardinals, we look at what just happened with the Dolphins. Like you overlook an opponent, and I think it's natural to overlook the Cardinals. It wouldn't shock me if you could see Kyler play a decent, like this is a type of game where Kyler does well in the first half, and then in the second half shits the bed, right?
Could be.
I have no qualm starting either. Like, I'm not going to, I understand the logic starting Fields. I understand the logic starting Kyler, but Cleveland is different than Arizona at home. I think that plays a major factor.
Yeah, I'd say Fields just because I know he's going to run the ball. And so I'm going to get some type of floor from him. And he might even get in the end zone through the ground. With Kyler, I mean, dude, we have such a big sample. So, like, a big sample size of quarterbacks just shit in the bed. Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, other guys, Geno Smith against that Niners defense.
But Drew Lock wasn't that bad.
He wasn't terrible. But the stat that Kondo brings up, 10 points. Cleveland only gives up 10 points at home, average. That's important to know. But I just like Fields' just rushing ability. I think because he's going to rush for like 60 yards at least, probably, and make it in the end zone. Like, I feel like you have a decent floor with Fields, where Kyler, I have no idea what the floor is.
Was that this week? Drew Lock, yeah. 17 fantasy points against the Niners.
That's pretty good.
It's actually not that bad.
And Kyler's much better than Drew Lock.
Someone, Cordy asked, Trey McBride or Isaiah Likely this week. I think you gotta start Trey McBride.
Wait, Trey McBride or who?
Or Isaiah Likely.
Oh, McBride. That's another one I was sort of nervous about this week, just because, again, San Francisco.
They're going to be throwing a lot.
They are going to be throwing. Also, I just kind of went around and looked at some early fantasy rankings for this upcoming week because, like, I'm excited for the playoffs, man. You know what I'm saying? And McBride is a top 3 tight end for a lot of outlets out there, man, ranking this week. So regardless of playing San Francisco, I know it's a tough matchup and they're great against tight ends, but McBride he's the number 1 option in Arizona, bro. Like, they have to go to him. And especially Kyler loves going to tight ends even more so. This is going to be a McBride game. It doesn't matter if they're playing the 49ers.
Ryan Price asks, Superflex League, he has Sam Howell, Russell Wilson, and Tua. Which 2 do I ride throughout the playoffs?
Probably Sam Howell for sure. You're definitely riding Sam. And then
I think right now, if Tyreek doesn't play this week, I don't think I'm going to start Tua.
No?
I just, that offense.
What is he on the year? Do you know? Like, as far as
Tua?
Fantasy QBs?
I'll tell you right now. Tua is quarterback 12.
Okay.
And frankly, I think he's started off better than he's been the last.
Totally. He started off hot as shit. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, look, it depends if Tyreek plays. The Dolphins need a bounce back, massive bounce back spot for them against the Jets. So, I would probably for this week go Sam Howell, Russ. If Tyreek plays, I obviously would put Tua in. Do you put Tua in for Howell or Russ? What did you say?
Russ. But okay, so he has Howell, Russ, and Tua. Russ has a really good matchup this week.
So do you want to start Russ no matter what?
I'm starting Howell. I'm starting Howell and Russ. Yeah, I'll say that.
Pedro Brito said Geno Smith or Justin Fields, Eagles revenge game.
Geno Smith or Justin Fields. Geno, the Seahawks. Who the Seahawks playing in Philly, right? You gotta go Geno.
I think you.
Against that Philly defense, Philly Swiss cheese defense, bro. They can't cover.
But I don't know if Geno's 100% going to play because he didn't play last week.
Well, I mean, then he has an easy decision. But
correct.
We're assuming he's playing, then Geno. Then I would go Geno. I think Fields has a decent floor, like I said before. But if I have another guy that could probably be a really good option, I'm going to go with that other guy.
There we go. Fev said pick 2: Brian Robinson, Calvin Ridley, OBJ, and Romeo Doubs.
That's a great question.
So I think no matter what, you got to start Brian Robinson.
Yeah,
I just think
good this year.
What you've seen from Brian Robinson and on the year, I'm pretty sure he is a top 12 running back. Brian Robinson actually has dropped. He's a top 15 running back. He's RB15 on the year. He hasn't had good weeks, but I still think I'm going to start him. I just think out of all the people, he's given you like the most consistent production throughout the year.
Yo, he switched from pick 2 to pick 1, and it's the same question. So like, there you go, Brian Robinson.
Yeah, I don't.
If you were to pick 2, though, who would be the second guy in that?
The thing is, OBJ's been coming along.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not starting Romeo Doubs. It'd obviously be between Ridley and OBJ. Ridley had the targets, but Trevor Lawrence was so fucking off. Oh, he said, well, if Tyreek's out, I need 2.
There you go.
If Tyreek's out, I'm going to go Ridley because I don't think OBJ, I think Ridley has the higher ceiling.
Good. You see that route he ran where he caught that touchdown?
He looks great, but I also think he was a byproduct of a shootout. And who are the Ravens playing?
They have a great matchup this week. Carolina, I think. Jacksonville?
OBJ also has not caught more than 5 catches in a game this year.
See, this is why we have producer Kondo back there.
Yeah, but he's efficient. Kondo.
I think I go
Was
Ridley.
last week.
If he's out, I go Ridley because the targets were there. Trevor Lawrence looked off and gives you just a higher ceiling than OBJ. So that's what I would do. We're gonna do this for. I was gonna say we're gonna do this for a little bit longer, just because we got to record our cafeteria episode that comes out tomorrow at 4 a.m. if you're an early riser, or 1 a.m. on the West Coast.
There you go.
So, and then obviously on Thursday we're back doing our start sits, strictly a start sit episode before the playoffs officially begin. So if we don't get to answer your question, make sure to come back Thursday. Obviously, hit that follow button on any of the accounts. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe. If you're listening, go to our YouTube or TikTok or Instagram and go hit that follow button there.
Please do.
To not miss anything that we talk about.
Yep.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, Matthew is asking, Jacoby Myers or Tyler Lockett? I'm going Tyler Lockett against Philly, man. I think Seattle, anybody on Seattle, like you're starting on DK. DK's got to bounce back this week too. DK, Tyler Lockett, even JSN I'm high on this week. Like, you got to go with these guys because Philly's defense, they've been – I think what are they giving up? The past 3 weeks, they've given up so many points, man. And receivers, I think against receivers, they're like 30th as a defense. And I'll confirm that in a second. But yeah, I would go Tyler Lockett.
Bless you on your burp, by
Thanks,
the way.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think I lean Lockett. He's just been good, even with Drew Lock.
Philly to back that up, they're 32nd against receivers. So they're the worst team in the league against wide receivers. I would start Tyler Lockett.
Spoons asked Javonte Williams or James Conner. I think I just tough matchup for James Conner, and still I'm going to trust Javonte. Javonte has it, like, that was his first rushing touchdown, I think, since like maybe it was like week 3, or maybe it was week 3 of last year.
Yeah,
before he got hurt. It was like some wild stat. I think I'm going to still start Javonte. The Broncos, when you're winning and players are playing decently, I guess, in that system, you're going to ride with that hand. So I'm going to go with Javonte. Do you have any thoughts to that?
Totally agree with that. Nothing to add.
Donnie said, pick 3, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, full PPR. DeAndre Swift, Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, and James Cook.
That's great.
2 wide receivers. Let's start there. Mike Evans and DJ Moore. I think no matter what, there's no way I'm taking.
Who's the first guy you said?
DeAndre Swift. I can't trust DeAndre Swift right now, personally.
Nah, even though Seattle's a good matchup for running backs.
I'll be honest. I'm going Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp. It's the playoffs. I'm swinging for the fences.
Yeah, I am too.
Cooper Kupp had a good game. James Cook had a good game, but it hasn't been consistent. I mean, he also had a receiving touchdown of like 30 yards. So is that going to happen again?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Mike Evans has a tough matchup this week against Green Bay. They're 8th against wide receivers, but you just got to go with him based off how he's been producing all year. He's one of those guys that's almost matchup proof.
Yep.
Because he's going to get the volume, and the volume he gets is red zone, deep balls. He gets, like, he can have 3 catches and he's going to score a lot. So, yeah, I think I agree with you. Swift, though, look, he's been bad the past couple of weeks, but it's been 2 bad matchups for him. This week is a good matchup. Seattle's 28th against running backs.
It's definitely a bounce back spot, but because it's PPR, I'm going to go for the receptions.
Yeah, I agree with what you said.
We'll do a few more questions before we hop off. Fran said, start 2, Zach Moss, Achane, ETN, and Swift.
Okay. I'm starting Zach Moss.
I don't know if I could start Zach Moss.
And I'm probably starting ETN.
I think first of all, I think I have to start Achane. Bounce back spot. Still had 10 points in fantasy. I think it was 12.
The Jets, bro?
Yeah, dude, he had, what do you mean? He as if, he got hurt. Was it? Oh, he missed the Jets game. I think it was.
I don't know.
But Mostert ran for 2 touchdowns. I'm not as concerned about that. I am concerned about their offensive line, but he, over the last 2 weeks, Devon Achane has been RB7. Travis Etienne, RB10. I think I definitely want to start Etienne. We just know what he is. Zach Moss, I was trying to pull up his stats. Zach Moss, since taking over, since Jonathan Taylor went down, is RB30 over these last 2 weeks. The volume's been there. I can't trust that in the playoffs. Even though the volume's been there, I think you're going to see his projected points. I can't trust that personally. I'm between Achane, Etienne, and Swift. Achane provides me a ceiling. If you want to start Swift over Achane, I don't mind it, but I definitely think it's 2 of those 3. Kondo, you're a Colts fan. What are your thoughts on not starting Zach Moss in the playoffs outside of those, in that context of those 4 players?
So I don't hate it. Like, I think if you're starting Zach Moss as like RB2, a flex, like
a flex for sure,
I don't mind that. It is Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's not that great in fantasy points, like allowed to running backs this season. I believe it is 22 points. Now this is to all running backs.
Right.
On average. He hasn't gotten in the end zone.
Right.
And I do think that spell is due to
I agree.
break.
That's fair.
But that's not like.
But is it enough to start over those 3 other guys? I don't think so, personally.
I am taking ETN and HN for the same reasons that you said. The upside with both.
What about
of those
Swift?
guys.
Would you start Swift or Zach Moss? I know they've both been bad. I just am taking the better offense.
Yeah, but Swift has had 2 bad matchups, and now he's got a good matchup.
But that's what I'm saying. The argument was like if you put Zach Moss in a flex.
Yeah. No, now that you mentioned Moss and RB30 over the past, we're taking over for Jonathan Taylor. I'm going ETN and DeAndre Swift. I think Swift bounces back this week against the Seahawks.
Yeah. I would want to start 3 running backs, maybe. I love starting running backs at my flex, especially in the playoffs. It just gives you a safe floor, unless you have really good options. But we're going to do one more question before we hop off. Let me find the right question. That guy said Donnie, by the way. He said, wait, I also have Nico Collins as well. Nico got hurt. To be honest, I know it's a bounce back spot. I think I'd rather go those running backs than anyone else.
Word.
Last question.
Bingo.
Last question. I'm going to find the right one.
Question.
Here's a really good one. Matt Goodman. This is my flex. Keaton Mitchell, Adam Thielen, Jaden Reed, or Amari Cooper?
Great question.
I think that is somewhere because there's a lot of dilemmas within that. I think I go Amari Cooper.
Hey, Connell mentioned it himself. Chicago's defense been playing well. They've been playing well.
Keaton,
I don't know against receivers though.
I started Keaton this week. Wasn't good. Again, we're talking playoffs right now.
Yeah, I might be thinking Adam Thielen there.
But Thielen has just not been good at all. And
he provides you a decent floor.
But even so, if he's getting targeted, Adam Thielen currently over the last 2 weeks, I got to scroll all the way down. Please hold. Is wide receiver 43. I just can't trust that in the playoffs.
No,
I do think. I'm not saying I could trust Amari, but I think Joe Flacco is going to be serviceable. Out of all those guys there, I think obviously I'd prefer Lamar over Joe Flacco, but I just think Joe Flacco is probably the best quarterback to support a fantasy player, right? Like if you had Zay Flowers over Keaton, then it'd be Zay. But Keaton Mitchell, I can't trust right now. Joe Flacco's throwing to Amari. Bryce Young's throwing to Thielen, and Jordan Love regressed again last night to Jaden Reed. Even though Jaden Reed scored on the ground, I would rather start Amari Cooper. I think that's kind of where my thoughts go. Connor, you got any thoughts there before we sign off?
Who does Green Bay play?
It's a good bounce back spot, but
my
that's
question.
Green Bay plays the Bucs.
I think I like Jaden Reed. I feel terrified saying it, but I think that's who I'm going with. I just don't see what too much of a ceiling is with Amari.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know the ceiling. I know the floor.
And I worry about the floor. I worry about Thielen too. I would love to say Thielen. That was where my mind immediately went. But I don't want to say Jaden Reed, but I feel like I have to.
Cooper saw 14 targets this week. He caught 7 of 14 for 77 yards. So I just think because it's playoffs, you're going to want to look for the floor. And I think Jaden Reed might give you the ceiling, but the floor is Amari Cooper.
Hot take. This Bears defense is playing like the 85 Bears defense.
All right. That's a good place to sign off. As a reminder, we do this twice a week. So our next time doing a start sit will be Thursday. So make sure to tune into that 10:30 a.m. live. And also Wednesday, tomorrow, our cafeteria episode drops. That drops at 4 a.m., 1 o'clock on the West Coast. So if you do want to listen to that, we're going to play a bunch of games, power rankings. Obviously, there's a lot of people that is going to be some movement in today's week.
True.
And as we've signed off on every single episode, today's week, did I say that?
Yeah, but it is today's week.
It is today's week.
It's not tomorrow's week.
I'm becoming delusional right now. As we sign off with a lot of our fantasy episodes, Felipe, give us our words of wisdom for the day.
If you don't win in the fantasy playoffs,
you suck.
You fail in life.
Let's go.
Get that win, whatever it takes. By all means, any cost, whatever the fucking saying is. Yeah, let's go.
Hey, we'll see you Thursday. Thanks again.